Hey everybody, so today I'm holding in my hands a Polytech Legend. This is a pretty accurate representation of the AK-47 as it was adopted by the Russian military in 1947. It's 7.62 by 39 in caliber. It has a machine receiver, wooden stocks, wooden pistol grip, and has a 16-inch barrel with a muzzle nut on the end. It doesn't have a flash suppressor or anything like that. This rifle is probably one of the most prolific rifles in the world today. You can show this rifle to somebody that's not even familiar with firearms and they would probably be able to identify this as the AK-47. Now the AK-47 has gone through a number of different evolutionary changes, much like our own M16. The AK-47, as I said, is in 7.62 by 39, but the AK-47 has also gone through a caliber change. The AK-74 is a 5.45 by 39 caliber rifle. And the AK-74 is the current Russian military service rifle. What I'm holding in my hands right now is an Arsenal SGL-21.94. This is a clone of the Russian AK-103 series rifle. It is a 7.62 by 39 caliber rifle. It is made in Russia and imported by Arsenal. Arsenal actually makes this rifle legal for the US market by making it compliant with 922R laws, meaning it has to have so many US parts count. But this rifle is just like the AK-74M, which is again the Russian current military service rifle in 5.45 by 39, except this one is in 7.62 by 39. It has all the same features as the AK-74M, including the AK-74M style muzzle brake, and it also has the Polymer side folding stock. Now, Arsenal made a pretty accurate clone of the AK-103, with the exception of the lack of a reinforcement plate under the pistol grip. Other than that, just about everything on this rifle looks just like an AK-103. The AK-103 is intended for export. The Russian military doesn't use the rifle. Perhaps some Spetsnaz troops use it or special forces use it, and some internal police forces within Russia have been known to use the rifle. But as I said, it was intended for export. The Venezuelan army actually adopted this rifle. They ordered 100,000 of the rifles, along with some tooling to manufacture parts, things like that, and load ammunition for the gun. But other than that, it hasn't really met with wide acceptance by any other militaries in the world. But it's one very robust and very neat rifle that is well evolved, and I like the fact that it has all the AK-74M features. I bought this rifle from Atlantic Firearms, and you can see the URL below to reach Atlantic. I bought this from Blaine. Atlantic Firearms is a great bunch of guys. I buy pretty much all of my AKs from them and firearms in general. They have great pricing and probably the best customer service anywhere in the industry. If you don't like the rifle for any reason, Blaine will take care of you. He'll either get you your money back or send you another rifle or something else. Be sure to check them out. Anyway, I really like this rifle. I'm going to take it to the range. We're going to continue the review at the range, do a little bit of shooting with it, talk about some of the additional features, and we'll come back and give you some closing thoughts. For being over 60 years old, the AK-47 is still one very effective rifle, even in its original trim. Here is the Polytech Legend that I showed you guys a little bit earlier, and even with the wooden stocks, the lack of a muzzle brake, this rifle still works pretty well. But there are a few things that the Russians changed in the 100 series rifles that actually improves upon the original design. Let's talk a little bit about those changes. One of the most effective changes that the Russians made to the 100 series AK was this AK-74 style muzzle brake. Now this doesn't act as a flash suppressor. As you can see, the thing has a pretty wicked flash. But in terms of taming the recoil of this rifle, this is probably one of the most effective muzzle brakes on the market. So that's one of the biggest changes they made. The other change is you'll notice that the rifle has polymer stocks instead of the wood stocks, the original rifle. The 100 series also makes use of a side folding polymer stock, buttstock. You depress this button here with your thumb and the stock locks in the folded position. This button right here actually releases the lock so the stock can be re-extended. Those are the biggest changes. There's also some internal changes to the rifle, which we'll show you here in a second, to the bolt and the carrier of the rifle. Also, this rifle actually has a stamped receiver. It's 1 millimeter thick. The original AK had a milled receiver, a machined receiver. That lightens the weight of the rifle. Another change is the use of this sight rail on the left-hand side of the receiver. The Russians put this on so you can mount optics to the rifle. The original AK had no provisions for mounting optics to the rifle. Let's talk a little bit more about the internals of the rifle and do a little bit more shooting. Okay, so here we are at 100 yards, and we were shooting at the head, and the furthest spread is probably a little less than 3 inches. Again, we were shooting brown bear, 123 grain hollow point ammunition, and we're using this 8-power POSP scope. All in all, it's a very nice shooting little package. The scope is a little bit unique. It sets off to one side, and that accounts for it being cocked off to the left a little bit. I didn't adjust for windage. It sets off to the left a little bit, and it sets a little bit high. It's not the easiest scope in the world to use, but for a couple $100, they're not bad optics to throw on an AK, especially if you have that accessory rail. So anyway, the rifle shoots very well. Let's head back to the firing line, take this rifle down, show you some differences between it and the original AK-47 on the inside. Okay, so we've done a little bit of shooting with the 103, and it shoots really nice. I am impressed with the rifle. Now, it has pretty much the same sighting arrangement as the standard AK-47. The sights haven't changed. As I mentioned, we do have the addition of a muzzle brake that really tames the recoil. We have polymer stocks. We have this left-hand side folding stock. Now, one thing that's worth noting is because the stock folds to the left, if you mount optics to it, you are no longer able to fold that stock and lock it. That's as far as the stock will fold with an optic mounted. So that's kind of a detractor in the design. However, I don't shoot with optics all that much, and if I do, I typically use a rail system. So the fact the stock won't fold and lock with an optic on is a minor nuisance to me, but that might make a difference to some of you guys out there looking at these rifles. Overall, the construction of the rifle is really nice. Now, it has a typical painted Arsenal finish, which means if you use a very heavy solvent, you can damage the finish, meaning it can rub off. So you do want to be careful in what you use to clean the rifle. Typically, I just use warm, soapy water to clean my rifles, and I use CLP to lube it up, or even rim oil to lube it up, and an air compressor to blow all the oil around the rifle. I've never had a problem with the finish on an Arsenal rifle. Now, there are some differences between the internals of this 103, or the SGL-21.94, versus the original AK-47. Here I have the original Polytech Legend AK-47 bolt and carrier. Now, what I want you to look at is the design of the carrier right here and how thick the bolt is, the neck of the bolt. I'm going to pull the bolt and carrier out of this SGL-21.94. Show it to you side by side. Now, the 103 series uses a slightly smaller diameter bolt in the carrier. So this bolt is not compatible with the original AK-47 bolt or carrier. It's a little bit different. They changed the cut of the carrier, as you can see, and they changed the bolt ever so slightly. So the two aren't necessarily compatible. Other than that, the design of this rifle is pretty much unchanged from the original AK-47. Here you can see the rails and the stamped receiver and a locking mechanism back here for the stock. Now, there seems to be some debate on the internet whether or not these rifles come into the country with the holes in the receiver for the, when they bastardize these rifles to get them into the country, they move the triggers further to the rear and put a conventional stock on them, and they don't have a pistol grip. This receiver is actually cut for that conventional stock, and it is cut so that the trigger can be mounted to the rear. You can see the holes in the receiver. Now, I did mention earlier in the video that this rifle doesn't have the reinforcement plate underneath the pistol grip, and all it is a piece of sheet metal that doubles the thickness of the receiver that protects the rifle from damage. If you should drop the rifle with the stock folded on the pistol grip, it won't bend the receiver. I would say it would probably be even more important to have that feature on this rifle because there is a hole underneath this pistol grip for the original trigger mechanism, so this receiver is weakened even more. I don't typically drop my rifles that hard on their pistol grip. I'm not too worried about it, but it's something that you might be concerned with when looking at this rifle. Overall, I'm impressed with the quality of the rifle. I've been a fan of Arsenal for some time. I like their rifles. It's a good company. The rifles shoot well. I've never had a problem with an Arsenal functionally. There are some minor cosmetic differences between the rifles. Sometimes the gas tubes fit a little tighter on some rifles than others and a little bit more difficult to get off, but that's just minor fitting issues. I've never, again, had a functional problem with an Arsenal rifle. In the end, I paid right around $1,200, a little less than $1,200 from this rifle, again from Atlantic Firearms. For the money, I think it's money well spent. This is probably the top of the line AK with the left-hand Russian side folding stock, and this is a limited production item from Arsenal, and it's sold through KVAR. They claim that this is a limited production item because these stocks are hard to get your hands on. People pay upwards of $200, $300, even sometimes more for these stocks, and then mounting them to a conventional rifle requires the services of a gunsmith because the locking mechanism, you actually have to cut into the receiver and trunnion to mount this locking mechanism. So you're looking at, the $300 or $400 just to have it mounted to your rifle. So if you add the cost of doing that to a standard Arsenal, which will cost you $750, $800, really it's kind of a cost savings having this limited production rifle with the stock already mounted. This is one of my favorite stocks. I am a fan of the Mako group stocks that fold to the right, but of the factory OEM stocks, this is probably the best stock that's out there right now. And this is the actual stock that the Russian military uses on the AK-74M. If you have any questions about this rifle, feel free to post those questions to our YouTube channel. Also, we actually prefer that you contact us on Facebook, and you can find us there at www.facebook.com/militaryarms. If you guys have any questions, post them there, and we'll see you guys soon. Thanks for watching.